Hi, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm really excited to welcome today to the InnovaBuzz podcast, all the way from New London in Connecticut, the USA, Erica Holthausen, who's the founder of Catchline Communications, which is a collective of writers and editors partnering with consultants and business coaches to position them as sought-after experts. Welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, Erica. It's a real privilege to have you here as my guest.
It's so great to be here. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Now, we met in Jason Van Orden and Michael Roderick's networking meetings, and Jason, he was our guest on episode 275 of the podcast, and Michael on episode 328. So big hello to both Jason and Michael, and congratulations on those events. They're really fabulous.
They are. You always meet such amazing people, and it's something I always make sure I don't miss.
All right. Now, your work, you help or you enable people to position themselves as sought-after experts by coaching them through a process of writing, editing, pitching, publishing high-quality original articles. And we had a brief conversation after the last event where we met, and I thought there's so much here is actually parallels podcasting in terms of producing the content, preparing the content, producing, publishing, and then promoting afterwards. And I thought it would be great to have the conversation today. So I'm really looking forward to digging into all of that with you today, Erica. Before we do that, what's the impact you're making in the world?
So I think the impact that I'm making in the world is helping really brilliant people get their ideas out into the world. You know, there's this idea of, I've always talked about, like, quiet brilliance doesn't get you recognized. And we all know those folks, those people who are just really good at what they do, but they're always in the background and they don't really get a chance to shine. And I love working with people and helping them figure out, how do I get my voice out there? How do I get my ideas out there? How do I really, spread these great ideas to a broader audience so that I can build my business or help make a bigger impact in the world or whatever their goal is.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Now, I guess one of the things you said there, and I thought that kind of reminds me, even in my early days in the corporate career, and there's so many people there that all I need to do is a good job and I will be noticed. And that's really a fallacy, isn't it? So tell us how you overcome that mindset. Do people actually talk to you if they're still in that mindset?
Yeah, that's, a lot of folks will talk to me about not really kind of the anxiety of getting something out there. Is it good enough to get out there? Is it something that's really adding to the conversation? Is it original enough? Because, with publications, they always want original content. Well, is my content original enough? Are my ideas good enough? Am I actually an expert? The people who I tend to think are the truest experts are the people who question whether they know enough yet. Because real experts we're always learning. And there's always another layer. I don't care how deep you have dug into something, there's always new stuff to learn. So there's often a lot of anxiety around, okay, how do I do this and should I do this? In the corporate world, sometimes it's making sure that all works with corporate because that's building your personal brand. With a lot of my clients are self-employed, so they're consultants and business coaches. And for them, it's more, okay, but what does it mean if I do this? And so there's a little anxiety there.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really interesting. The other thing I find in talking to people about podcasting or about blogging is the belief that, well, I don't really have anything to write. Or I'm not a writer, as the other one.
Yeah.
Or I don't like speaking when it comes to podcasting. So what's your view on that belief? How do you break that down?
My first view is, of course, course you have something to say. But it's so easy and so natural for us to discount our own experience or discount the things that we know like the back of our hands. But then it's remembering, well, yes, you know that because of your experience. And, in some cases that's your education plus your work experience. Sometimes it's your work experience and just life experience. But you bring something to the table. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a job. So you have something to say. So first, it's kind of saying, well, that's not true. Let's dig into it deeper, because I guarantee you that you know stuff that I know absolutely nothing about. And if I'm allowed to sort of get curious with you, it's sort of what you get to do with your podcast. You get to get curious about the people who are on the show with you. And all of a sudden, all of these stories come out. So we all have a story and we all have something to share. And, if it's something that you're interested in doing, we will find it. We will, we will find it because it's there. I guarantee it.
Well, I'd love to find out a little bit more about how you dig into that, but I just want to comment on something you said a moment ago, that we often discount what we know, or sometimes for me it's even more than that. It's not even being aware that something that we just take for granted, that we do almost unconsciously, is of value to another person. And the classic example that my business coach always uses in terms of unconscious knowledge is driving a car. So we, those of us that have learnt to drive and have driven for many, many years, we just hop in the car, turn on the ignition, drive to wherever we're going, and it's just like I'm driving. That's just one big package of knowledge that you take for absolutely for granted, and it's almost unconscious. I've got to go from A to B, I'll hop in the car and get there, and that's it. It's done. And yet for somebody that doesn't know how to drive a car, they think that's absolutely amazing. Yeah. And I've had experiences where I've worked with clients, they've been in my office in front of the computer, and we've decided, okay, we've got to do something, and I've kind of just gone ahead and done something, and they've watched over my shoulder, and they'll pull me up and say, hang on, what did you just do there? That's absolutely amazing. And I'm still in this mindset of, oh, what do you mean? What was it that I did? And it's just some little thing, some tiny little thing that, and it may involve a tool or a technique that you know about, and you take it for granted. So, yeah, there's often value in kind of having somebody observe that and say, wow, that's brilliant. Can you sort of document that in some form?
Yeah, because usually we can't see our own thing because we just do it. We don't even have to really consciously think about it. We just do the thing or say the thing or share the information and think, well, doesn't everybody know this? And well, of course not. It's that kind of constant reminder that the world we live in and the circles that we are in, especially in our work world, like that's a very specialized set of knowledge and experiences and skills. And it's so easy to sort of forget because it comes so easily to us. And usually the thing that comes so easily to us is the thing that is so highly valued by others.
Yeah, I love that. What comes so easily to us. Yeah. All right. So if somebody then comes to you and says, I'd like some help, I'd like to write some articles, I'd like to publish in some journals and get more visibilities, but I don't know what to write, or I'm not sure I've really got a good story. So what's your process for kind of digging deeper with them, finding out what is their story, what's unique about them, what are the things of value that they have that they perhaps don't recognize right now?
Yeah. So I always start by taking a big step back with folks and saying, okay, what are your goals for doing this? Like, why do you want to write and publish articles? It would be the same with podcasts. Like, why do you want to start a podcast? There are a bunch of reasons that are all great reasons to do it, but you have to know why you're actually doing it, what your business goals are, what you want to accomplish out of that. Because when you have your goals and you know what you are trying to do, that can help you make the right decisions along the way in terms of both, how you structure this thing. What are the publications that you go after? What are you going to talk about? Because if what you really want to talk about is kittens and rainbows, you're probably not going to go after a business publication. So making sure that all of those things are lined up. So I always start with the strategy piece and really understanding, what those goals are so that you can pick the right publications to actually help you reach those goals. Because if you're looking for something like, say, SEO is your primary goal and you want to drive more traffic to your website, not all publications will help you reach that goal equally. So some of them allow you to have a bio at the end of every single article, and that gives you a link back to your website. That's great for SEO. Others give you an author page. So you have your name at the top of every article, but you don't have a link back for every article. That doesn't have as much SEO oomph, for lack of a better word. Same with, is your goal to get more clients, or is it to really connect with the other movers and shakers in your field? Those are different goals that require you to go after very different publications. Yeah.
And again, there's a lot of things where you really need to start with the objectives. Why you're doing this? What's your unique take on this, and where is it heading? And certainly that's how we start off any new client on when they say, I want to start a podcast. Well, that's great. Why? What's your objective?
And then it's thinking about, what do you want to be known for? Because what do you want to be known for is the thing that'll then shape, okay, here's what you are writing about or talking about. Here's sort of the structure. And the more specific that is, the easier it is to come up with ideas, to find guests, to do all of that. If it's super, super broad, then it can be harder to be known for that thing. If you don't have an overarching theme that really brings everything else under the umbrella, and no matter how small you think your umbrella is, it's way bigger. But if you don't have that overarching theme, folks can get lost in terms of, but what is this? What is this person really standing for? What do they really believe? What is their area of expertise? So suddenly it makes it harder for me as the reader or listener to categorize you. And humans love to categorize all the things, including other humans. So if I'm not sure where to put you, you get stuck in the miscellaneous pile. And it's much harder to stand out in the miscellaneous pile than it is to stand out in the, innovation. That's what he likes to talk about. Cool. Now I know.
Yes, I love that. It's much harder to stand out in the miscellaneous panel. I think that could be a business motto for people, because the classic kind of mistake, I guess, or the learning that people have to go through right at the beginning of their entrepreneurial journey is, what I do or what I have is not for everybody. And how do I focus so that my content, my communication is targeted to those people it's actually for?
Yeah, and being okay with the fact that you might actually turn off some people. And that's good, because they're not your people. So, and that's such a huge part too, is who is your audience. So you've decided to start a podcast or write articles for publication. Who are you trying to talk to? And the more specific you can get, the easier it is to then choose what's the right publication to help me reach that audience.
Yeah, that's a really important point. And certainly in podcasting, you do send podcasts to all the major directories, or people do. In fact, I've got systems where we send it to all the directories, so it's accessible everywhere. But when we get to the promotion part, that's where it's really got to be focused, because, like you say, if it's a cat and rainbows story, then we need to find the cat and rainbows people, not
Right.
promote it to kind of corporate executives, C-suite executives, unless they're also cat and rainbow people in their free time.
Right, because everything's a
outside
Venn
work time.
diagram, so there's always some overlap.
Yeah, that's right. All right, now, I guess we get to this point working with you, and one of the things that I often hear when I talk to people about that they need to be publishing blog posts is, well, I don't have anything to write, or I don't know what to write. So what's the steps you take through people through that have that sort of mindset? Because I'm sure you come across it.
Yeah, so first it always starts with, what do you want to be known for? Like, let's figure out what it is that you want to be known for. And then I often encourage people, read a ton of stuff within that area, because, and look for the people who either inspire you because they have an idea that maybe you hadn't thought of before, or who make you angry because you really disagree with what they're saying. Like, that's that contrarian approach, and I come by it a little too naturally, but that contrarian approach can be really, really powerful. And editors love it because it says, oh, this is the thing we think that this industry has come up with, that this industry takes for granted and assumes is correct. And then here's somebody who's saying, what if we look at it this way? So looking at the things, along those same lines, looking at the things in your industry, what are your pet peeves about how your industry is operating? Because that can be a powerful place to dig a little deeper. And then one of the things that I do with my clients is I always help them create an editorial calendar. And we develop 12 article ideas as a good starting place. And the more you develop those article ideas, and the more you listen to your clients, when your clients or your coworkers or your boss or your team asks you a question, write down that question, because that could be a great article topic. And that could be a great thing to dig in deeper. So the ideas are everywhere. It's more getting into that habit of gathering them and collecting them and capturing them. And there are really neat ways to do it that I have never mastered. And then there are the really messy ways that I have mastered. And those usually are sticky notes, and backs of envelopes, and sometimes the notes on my phone. But capturing and gathering those ideas helps. So with the editorial calendar, we always have some article ideas that are really pretty well developed with a good headline, a good deck, which is, some publications use it, some don't, but it's the sort of subhead to the main headline, and sort of what the main purpose is. And then I have a holding tank where it's just random ideas that I've captured or thought about. And anytime you have somebody who can ask questions of you, this is where it can be great. If you have friends or a partner who are not in the same industry as you, they're going to ask, and you just say, indulge me. Let me tell you about this. I want you to ask questions. Listen to the questions that they're asking. And if they say, well, but why do you do it that way? Really think about that, because sometimes they're onto something. And the way we do something, we've just done it because we've always done it, because that's how we were taught to do it. But maybe it's not the most effective way. So having those conversations can also help you sort of think through the process.
Yeah. And do you recommend people record those conversations?
If you're going to bother listening to them.
Yeah.
So, in these days, it's so easy. Like, when I started as a freelance writer, I had a little tape recorder. We didn't have automatic transcription services. These days, it's so easy. Record all the things, get a transcription service, transcribe all the things, and then go through and find the nuggets and capture them. That can be so powerful. And today, it's so bloody easy to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I discovered a little while ago, I mean, we use some transcription services for various things. We don't actually transcribe these podcasts, but we use it for other things in our work. And as we were doing that regularly, and I was going on lots of podcasts as a guest, and I remember listening to one episode, and the podcast host asked me a bunch of really good questions that got me opening up about why we did things a certain way and how we went about stuff. And I thought, gee, that was really, I really articulated very well some of those points. And I thought, I've never written that down anywhere like that. I was quite impressed with myself. Got myself a pat on the shoulder. And then I realized, hey, I'm going to take that recording and put it into the transcription software we've got, and did that. And so here was a bunch of article prompts that were actually really good. Some of them, all we had to do was kind of edit out the errors in the transcription. And it was almost done. So. Yeah,
which brings up a great point, actually, because a huge, so many people will say, but I'm not a writer. And my response is, of course you are. Did you write an email today? You probably wrote like 30. So first of all, yes, you are. Second, okay, fine. Do you love to speak and present? And, what is the comfort level? Because there is nothing wrong with taking your phone and just take a walk and talk to yourself and get the transcription. And that gets the ideas down on the page, because there's this great quote, and I wish I could remember the man's name. He was the cartoon editor for The New Yorker for about 20 years. And he says, it's not about the ink, it's about the think. I don't care how you get the ink on the page. It's about what's going on up here that really turns it into something that's worth my time as a reader. It's how you are thinking about it and how you shape those words ultimately that really matters. So I love this idea of, that's the other great thing. The more speaking that you do, sometimes things come out of your mouth and you're like, I have no idea where that came from.
Yeah, that's right.
And I don't know about you, but when I'm doing something like this, an interview, I'll get to the end of this, I will have had no idea what I said. So listening to it later also helps, because you pick up on those things that's like, oh, that's a really, he really made me think about this, and I said something different than what I've said in the past. That's sort of a really interesting place to dig in a little further and explore.
Yes, it's certainly, there's lots of ways you can generate some ideas and content, and I love this idea. I haven't tried this yet, but I'm sure that it's something that would work for me, this walk and talk and record. I know there's a bunch of apps now that will do that and give you prompts as well. So there's often times when I'm out riding my bicycle on my own, for example, and I have a whole bunch of thoughts, and I start to randomly put those thoughts together, and it would probably be really helpful if I could record myself at that point, record some of those thoughts.
Yeah, there's something, I don't know what it is, but for me, there's something about if my feet are moving, my brain is working. And I think it's Ocean Vuong is a poet whose work I really love, and he says we carry our stories in our body. So he's also a big believer in, it's not about writer's block, and it's not that you don't know, you just have to write differently. So you have to go for a walk so that you can kind of like get your story out of your body and onto the page. And there's something quirkily magical about walking around the neighborhood with my phone and just talking into it.
All right, let's switch gears a little bit. So people write some articles, and obviously if you have a blog, that's an easy place to publish that article, so there's no barriers to get it published. We'll talk about promoting in a little while, but if you want it published, let's say I'm really ambitious, I'd love to have an article in Forbes or in Inc. or something like that. What's the process that we should be thinking about to pitch that publication in a way that it's likely to get accepted?
Yeah, great question and big question. So I'm a recovering attorney, so a lot has not changed about this new job because the answer is it depends. Yeah. So every single publication has different guidelines in terms of what they're looking for. Some publications require you to, pitch them an idea and they want you to be writing for 6 months. So Inc., for example, they prefer people to commit to writing for 6 months. So they want you to pitch a column. Mm-hmm. And in any pitch, you basically need to have your bio, and that bio should be relatively short and it should establish credibility. So if you've been published elsewhere, including that. If you've been on certain podcasts, including that. If you work for a prestigious company, including that. So including those things that say, this is why you should listen to me. That's the purpose of the bio, is to tell the editor, this is why I have something to say that your readers will want to listen to. You also need clips. So those are basically writing samples. It doesn't matter if those writing samples are published with a third-party publication or if they appear on your own website or if they appear as an article on LinkedIn, for example. All of that's fair game. But you need to have clips, and those should be about whatever the topic is that you want to write about when you're pitching this publication. So I always encourage people to go back, identify maybe 3 clips, and edit them to make them really good. And part of that editing process is looking at the publication you're going after and seeing, how do they format their articles? Do they have the headline and the deck, which is sort of that subhead? Do they just have the headline? Within the body, do they have multiple subheads or not? And kind of mimicking the format, because it shows the editor, I understand how to write for the online world. Because writing an article for the online world is very different from writing an article for a print publication. So you want to show them that you get it. And then you need to have, what's your beat? So the beat is sort of the newspaper reporter's beat. What are the topics that you're going to talk about? And with most of these, you want to give them maybe 3 to 5 headlines as examples. So you might say, I want to talk about innovation in the tech sector, and then you might give maybe 3 to 5 headline examples. Here are some things that I could write about. And again, with those headlines, making sure that the headlines are formatted in the same way as that specific publication formats them. So some publications really love, X ways to do blah-de-blah. Others don't want that at all. Some of them, so seeing how do they like to write their headlines? And that's where the best way to find that is just going right to the homepage of the publication, because the homepage is where the homepage editor has chosen which articles go on that page. So if the headline caught their attention, that's kind of some of what they're looking for. So that's what you really need for the pitch. Not every publication requires a pitch. Sometimes you're actually submitting an article. So for Inc., for example, requires you to pitch a column. So you tell them what you're going to publish. In their guidelines, they also ask for something like 12 different headlines. So the 3 to 5 won't cut it. With Fast Company, on the flip side, they just want you to submit an article for consideration. So you have to have the entire article done, and then it's a submission. So you're still having the bio, but you don't need the clips and all of the ideas. You just need to say, then you're doing a little sort of summary, very, 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 very short summary of what your article is, so that they can then read it and consider whether they want to publish or not. So that's kind of those first things. The one other piece that I will say, because it's important to know, is some of these publications are basically pay to play. So most contributors to Forbes, though not all, are members of the Forbes Council. And one of the benefits of being a member is that you get to publish on their platform.
Okay, yeah. So there's various ways to approach it, but the key for me is start by reading some articles on that magazine, and then probably they publish guidelines for writers or guidelines for. Yeah.
Some do. Some don't. That's the other part that's really tricky, is not all of the publications make it clear how to become a contributing writer. But always, if you Google the name of the publication and contributor guidelines, that will help you find, it gives you at least a hope that you'll be able to find those guidelines, and they can provide some more information around, how long do they like their articles? So it provides you a little bit more context. What are the topics that they do like to talk about? Who do they think their audience is? That may or may not be accurate, but who they think their audience is the most important thing, because that's the type of articles, they're going to want articles that speak directly to that audience.
Yeah. So again, knowing who your audience is and then understanding where are the publications that speak to that audience is really critical. Yeah.
And then, another layer on top of that, when you're choosing which publication to go after, oftentimes people have an idea of the publication in mind when I start working with them. Sometimes it stays, sometimes it goes, because again, it depends on what your goals are, but then it also depends on evaluate the publication, because you want to, this is a publication that's going to be associated with your brand, whether it's your company or whether it's your personal brand. I, as a reader, will judge you based on the publication that you are in. So every publication has a slightly different personality. And finding the publication that has the personality that's a good fit for you is a part of that process. So it's reading those headlines. And if you see some headlines that make you roll your eyes or sigh or some other emotional reaction, that tells you a lot, because that means that publication may not be the right publication for you. Yeah.
So doing a little bit of homework to get an understanding of those things. What's my reaction to the articles that I read there, and if it's sighing or rolling of the eyes, then maybe you don't want to be there, unless of course you decide that your mission is to improve the quality of the articles in that publication, in which case you probably need to write a lot more.
Right, and in which case they may never let you in, because that's not who they're going after, the people who love the stuff that makes me roll my eyes.
That's right.
So BuzzFeed is a great example of that. Like, their headlines make me roll my eyes every single time. And they don't care. I'm not their audience. So they could care less that I'm like, oh my God, it's horrible. They don't care. They've got their readership, and their readership loves it. So knowing what fits and what's a good match will make it a much more enjoyable process, but it will also more likely connect with your right audience, because the people that you most want to be working with or connecting with are probably having a similar emotional reaction to anything that's right. Smells of clickbait or stuff like that.
So knowing your audience and then knowing what are the publications that speak to that audience. All right, so let's talk briefly about promotion. Because like in podcasts, I talk to people about appearing on other people's podcasts, and I say, well, that it's not done when you've finished that thing. There's a promotion step after that. So and it's the same with publications, right? So you published, we go, oh yes, it's published, there it is, it's finished, I'm done, tick, move on to something else.
Right.
And
sadly, you get that one article published in an amazing publication, and people are not going to be knocking down your door. So, I think very similar to podcasts, it's being able to, how can you repurpose that article? both to promote it, but also many publications are perfectly happy to have you actually republish the same article elsewhere after a particular time. So oftentimes they say we need original content, so it can't have been published anyplace else at all ever. And they want it exclusively theirs for maybe 10 to 14 days. But after that, you can publish the exact same article on your own blog, usually with a link back to the original. Sometimes you have to change the headline. And that's a way to help it do some double duty. But along those same lines, in terms of how do you promote this thing, the more you can take little snippets of it and say, okay, here's a takeaway. So this is something I can use as a takeaway, and you can promote it on social media. You can take another takeaway. So you can often get quite a few takeaways from an article that you can then use to promote on social media. All of the obvious things, sharing it in your email newsletter, getting it up on your own blog. You can do a YouTube video, depending on where you are in your marketing, what your marketing strategy and the tactics you use looks like. There are different ways to repurpose the article so that you can share it across several different platforms. For me, the most impactful way to promote one of these articles is if you've written, say, a column for Inc. and you have a number of different articles up there. Sometimes you might be having a conversation with a potential partner or a potential client or somebody along those lines and say, oh, you know what? I just wrote an article about that. Let me send it to you. And not only now you're sending them an article from Inc. Inc. has already vetted you. That gives you an additional level of credibility. I now see you as a credible resource, and you've just jumped ahead of the competition because you sent me an article from Inc. that you wrote, which means that the publication has already vetted you.
Yeah, there's lots of great suggestions there, and certainly the idea of really leveraging the content, the work that you've already done to write that one article. There's actually not that much work in repurposing it to so many different places. But the value of that repurposing is huge, isn't it?
Yeah. Jason Van Orden actually always talks about how do you stack the ROI. So how do you have this one thing that you've done and get as much out of it as you can? So thinking about, okay, here's the original article that I know is going to be published on Inc. or Fast Company or whoever. What are ways that I can get more out of this so that you're not adding a ton of additional time and more stuff to your to-do list, because none of us need more stuff on our to-do list. So if we can repurpose these in such a way, or just even reuse them in such a way that we don't have to have, I have my content marketing strategy and writing articles. Well, what if the articles could feed your content marketing strategy, and you can do all of that together? It makes life a whole lot easier.
Yes, great advice. All right, well, I think it's a good point now to move on to the buzz, which is our innovation round, and it's 5 lightning questions that hopefully you'll give us some insights that'll inspire the listener to go and do something awesome today. You ready?
I love that. I'm as ready as I'm going to be.
Great. All right. Well, what's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
Read. All the things. Widely, chaotically, read all the things. Listen to all the things. Get new information into your brain, because you will find connections where you least expect it.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm being a naturally curious person. That's me. I'm always, usually I'm listening to stuff. I sort of prefer audio books because I can then do that when I'm walking, when I'm commuting, when I'm driving the car. I've usually got either Audible or some podcast running. So it's
and the more you get new information in, you start seeing connections. I read a lot. I tend to listen if I'm in my car or if I'm on a walk, but I tend to read a lot otherwise. And every once in a while, you'll have this weird confluence of stuff where I listened to the On Being podcast and heard this, and then I'm reading this other thing, and oh my gosh, they're talking about the same thing. And I think that relates to this project I'm working on for work. And the more we kind of allow all of those ingredients to kind of like mix around in our brains, the more something pops out and we're like, that's something I hadn't thought of before.
Great. I love it. All right. Well, you might have just told us, but what's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
So all of that, but then next level, scheduling time for deep work every day. I put aside 90 minutes in the morning. My brain works best first thing in the morning. And so I put aside 90 minutes every morning to just focus on deep work. I plan for what my deep work is going to be focused around the night before. So this is usually something that's writing, creating, it's along those lines where I have to be really focused and I can't have any distractions. So it's before I even load up my email. All of my notifications on my computer are off, always, forever, because that focused time is so critical. And the most amazing things happen in that time period, and problems get solved, and I restructure something. And so I'm a huge fan of deep work. And that was an idea that came through Cal Newport, who wrote a book called Deep Work. So,
that's right.
That's one of the books that has changed the way I run my business. And that 90 minutes every single morning, I wouldn't give it up now for anything in the world.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Once you get into that zone and can have that focus, it's amazing, isn't it? And I love Cal Newton's book, really.
Yeah.
So we'll link to that one in the show notes. All right. Do you have a favorite resource you use most often?
Ready? My public library.
Love it.
I love libraries. So some of this is because this is a nerdy, geeky, happy place for me, but also because I can get any book I need through the library because of Interlibrary Loan. They also have a free audiobook service. So if I can't get the actual physical book, I can probably get the audiobook through that free service. It's helping me learn Spanish. So my library truly is probably the resource that I use the most often, that I rely on heavily. If we're looking for research for something, if a client is working on a project and we're trying to find some good research, oftentimes my library can actually get the actual study as opposed to an article that cites an article that cites an article that cites a study. We can actually get the study. So that is my number one favorite resource.
I love it. Yeah. It's we have a pretty amazing library here in our city, and I haven't been there since before COVID and the pandemic. So you've reminded me I need to go back and just see what's going on there. But it is a resource that I think in this day and age of the internet, people kind of overlook sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's easy to sort of forget about it and to forget about all of the different resources that they have access to and that they can connect you to. They can connect you to databases that as an individual, I both don't have access to and couldn't afford to access. So, sometimes it's worth just talking to a good resource librarian and saying, okay, here's my situation, whether it's I own a business or this is what resources are available, because they know everything. They're just, librarians are amazing humans.
Great. All right. Now, what's the best way to keep a client on track?
So there's the more sort of technical thing that I would say, providing a structure, having some agreed upon deadlines. There's that kind of thing. But then there's also one of the things that I have learned to love is co-working sessions. And so I actually, with one of my programs, I host co-working sessions with the folks who are in the program because I find them valuable. So we all come together on a computer, over Zoom. We tell each other, okay, this is what I'm working on for the next hour and a half. And then we dig in. And because we all showed up, there's that sense of, well, I can't let you down. If I know that we have a co-working session scheduled for tomorrow, I'm not going to let you down. I'm going to make sure I show up for our co-working session. And then once you're there, well, you may as well do the thing. So that can really help with the implementation piece. And I kind of discovered it because my natural tendency, if I could be a full-time professional student and some college or university would pay me to take classes, like sign me up. That's what I do. The downside of that is that sometimes implementation is harder. So having those co-working sessions also really helps me. And I found that it also, clients enjoy it as well because it's like, oh, like here's the thing we're supposed to do. And now I have 90 minutes this week carved out to do that thing.
And somebody else kind of there to make sure I'm doing it.
Right. And making sure that, did you show up and like, how did it go? And did you, at the end, it's always asking, how did it go? And if they ran into stumbling blocks, how can we break through those? How can we get you onto that next step?
Yeah. That's brilliant. It's kind of a working session mastermind combination.
Yeah, and it's sort of, I think that's the key too, is for every client that's a little bit different. What they need is a little bit different, and being able to either intuit that or having the conversation to find out what will help you stay on track, can also be really helpful. Jason Van Orden is my coach, and I have told him, like, I need you to sometimes not be quite so nice. And he's like, okay. And then he'll say, you need to do this. Okay. Because we all have our different ways of responding to things. And sometimes, like, yes, I need a little tough love sometimes because otherwise I will weasel my way out of it. Even though I know it's not in my best interest to do so.
Fantastic. All right. And what's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
Get your ideas out there. Quiet brilliance does not get you noticed. It does not get you recognized. It does not get you known as a leader or as an expert. So get your ideas out there. Yeah,
I love it. And it just circles back to where we started the conversation, right? So you've get the ideas out there, and there's lots of tips that you've given us in terms of ideas for how to do that and what are the things that are going to be most valuable to our particular audience.
And that's the other piece, is it's remembering there's no one right way to do this. There are so many different paths up that mountain. Start with the one that you actually enjoy. If writing makes you your head want to explode, go with podcasting or with video. If video makes my head want to explode, which is I'm like, I'm not doing it. So find the thing that's really the place to start, and then you can always explore more. But there's so many different paths up that mountain. Just start with get those ideas out there.
And then we can repurpose, right?
Yeah.
So thanks, Erica. This has been really great. Now, where can people find out more about the work you do, and maybe even reach out to say thanks for what you've shared today?
Yeah, so my one and only social media outlet is LinkedIn. So I would love to connect with folks there, and please let me know that you heard us have this conversation on the InnovaBuzz podcast, which I've practiced saying that for so long, and I still screwed it up. InnovaBuzz. And so that's one place to connect. My website is catchlinecommunications.com. That's where you'll see all the things and all the things I do. One place to check out there, I have a free Q&A that I host every month called Pitched to Published. So that'll be in the show notes, I take it. And it's always fun. It starts with about 10 minutes of learning and sharing some resources and that kind of thing. And then we just open the floor to whatever questions everybody in the room has. And I do my level best to answer them. And if I don't know, I have research to do and can find out. So that's a fun event to get some answers to questions and also get to know and connect with me a bit.
Fantastic. And it probably gives you lots of new ideas for articles you could write.
Yes. And that's like, but it took me a long time to be like, oh, right. Like they're asking me questions. I should write these questions down so that I can answer them also in a blog post.
Excellent. All right. And as you said, we'll have all of those links in the show notes so people can click straight through. Now, do you have any parting advice, some action you'd like our listener to take from today's conversation?
I guess the first step I would say is try to really identify what it is that you want to be known for and start thinking around that level of, start thinking around that concept and try to just, take 10 minutes. Oh, here's a great assignment. Ready? It's a free writing exercise. I love free writing exercises. So you can put at the top, get a pen and paper, set the timer for 10 minutes. At the top of the page, you write what I want to be known for is, get the timer going and just write. Don't stop. Don't start editing yourself. Just write. And if you get stuck, you say what I really want to say is, and keep going. Usually what happens for me is the first 7 minutes is absolute trash. It's terrible. And then someplace around the 7.5, 8 minute mark, something comes out that I hadn't thought of before. And then you can just keep going. If the timer goes off at 10 minutes, you're like, oh, hallelujah. Go ahead and stop. It's totally cool. If the timer goes off and you're feeling like you're in the flow, just keep writing. Because that'll start getting some of these ideas out on a page so that you can then say, okay, I've got these ideas. Now, how am I going to share them with the world? Do I want to do a podcast? Do I want to do live streams? Do I want to do TikTok or YouTube? Do I want to write? Like, how do I want to get some of these ideas out into the world?
That's brilliant. I love that. So free writing exercise. There we go. Action
I
from
use
today.
it regularly.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Finally, Erica, who else should I get on the show and why?
Okay. So Erin Austin of Think Beyond IP. She is an intellectual property attorney, but so much more than an intellectual property attorney. So what Erin really is brilliant at is helping people figure out, how do you take all of this innovation and creativity that you have built in your business and make it an actual asset that you can license or sell or, leverage in some way. So whether you have a business that you ultimately want to sell, or you have a business and you want to build the value of that business, or perhaps you want to train other people to implement the thing that you do. The way her brain works just blows my mind all of the time. And I think it would be a great conversation, and just that's innovation and creativity is her jam. So it feels like such a natural fit. And she's just an amazing human. So I know that you'd have fun.
Excellent. All right. Well, we'll get an introduction to Erin from you and reach out to her to begin that conversation. So thanks for that.
Great.
And thanks so much for sharing your time and your insights so generously with us today. I've really enjoyed this, Erica. It's as I said at the beginning, there's so much that parallels podcasting in writing articles and getting published in often prestigious publications, and there's other aspects of it that were new learnings for me today. So I'm really happy that we had this conversation. I'm looking forward to sharing it with my audience, and thanks for all of the insights you've shared and the wisdom, and all the best for the future. Let's keep in touch.
It was absolutely my pleasure, and yes, you won't be able to get rid of me that easily.